All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is very late in the game. I wanted to talk about this when this first came about, but I felt like it wasn't my place, and it still isn't my place. But now that I have done my research and I've thought about it long enough, I think I have some valid points to say. So I read Martin Scorsese's statements about what he thinks is cinema and what isn't cinema. And the big debate is about Marvel and how Marvel is taking over and their theme park movies, they're not cinema and all this stuff. And at first I was very butthurt about it. I still kind of am butthurt about it. But after reading his comments and marinating on it for a long time, I understand where he's coming from, but it still kind of doesn't make any sense to me. So, reading his article, I've highlighted some points here. There are a lot of points, but let's do it piece by piece. Number 1. In the words of Martin Scorsese, I've tried to watch a few of them and they are not for me. And what he's talking about is Marvel movies. He's admitted that he's tried to watch a few of the Marvel movies, but they're not for him. And I'm glad that he admitted that. He's not saying, oh, it's trash, it's garbage, it's not cinema. He's like, nah, I watched it and it's just not for me. And there's nothing wrong with that because all movies are subjective. Not everyone on this planet has the same opinion. I can say a movie is garbage and someone else can say, oh, no, I love that movie. Does it make either one of us invalid? No. It's just our opinion based on our own taste. So there's nothing wrong with that. Number 2. These movies are closer to theme parks than they are to movies. Now, I do kind of take offense to that. I take offense to it because what is the definition of a movie? I look at it on Google. Definition of a movie is a story or event recorded by a camera as a set of moving images and shown in the movie theater or on television. It's a motion picture. A movie theater, motion pictures, genuinely, or the motion picture industry. How is a Marvel movie not a movie? It's not a movie to him, and he points that out. He's like, I grew up in a different time, so this isn't what I grew up with, so it's not a movie. But you can't say just because it's not your taste, it's not a movie. A movie is what the definition says. It's a feature film, it's a motion picture, it's something that's shown on the big screen, it's made by thousands of people who put their hard work into it. Maybe the executives want to pump it out like it's doo-doo, but you have genuine artists who care about their product and they want to create something for the movie going audience. So I disagree with him saying that it's not, those aren't movies. But when he says they're closer to theme parks, I do agree with that because when you watch an action movie, it gets your excitement levels up, gets your blood flowing, and you're on the edge of your seat, as they say, and you're just in a trance as to what's going on. But what I will say about that is when he's talking about these are theme parks and they're not movies, it makes me think, okay, so you're telling me that Jaws isn't a movie. Because, yes, even though it has characters in it who have depth, the movie's mostly about a killer shark, and it's an animatronic. It's an action thriller drama. You're telling me movies like Jurassic Park, that's not a movie because it has CGI dinosaurs in it. You're telling me that the James Bond movies, those aren't movies because there's lots of action and explosions in it. But he even makes a point in the article where he's like, yeah, like Hitchcock is his own genre, and something like North by Northwest could be considered a theme park because there's lots of stuff going on in there. He talks about there's this one movie where it ends in a merry-go-round sequence, and that's like a theme park. And a theme park, what is a theme park supposed to do? A theme park is supposed to get your adrenaline pumping. It's supposed to make you happy and excited, filled with energy. It's like you got a shot of testosterone or you just drink an energy drink or a pot of coffee, and all of a sudden your energy levels are 100%. So it's like it kind of contradicts itself. It doesn't make any sense to me. Where he's like, yeah, they're closer to theme parks, which makes sense, but they're not movies. So you mean to tell me a Marvel movie that falls into the action category, action movies aren't considered movies? What is a movie? A movie that's shown on the big screen. And he does make the point that those aren't movies to him, but then when he makes the point that they're not movies in general, it's just like, okay, bro, I don't agree with that. So number 3, I've known and loved them throughout my whole life. So what he's saying is that his particular kind of cinema, the particular kinds of movies that he enjoys, he's known and loved those kind of movies throughout his whole life. And he makes it clear that these Marvel movies are not for me. They're not my cup of tea. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, I feel like he's disrespecting these kinds of movies because they're not for him. He just can't simply say, it's not for me, I don't like it. He has to go, they're not movies, they're not... It's like, bruh, you're using these words and making your own definitions for them. But I understand where he's coming from, where he's like, they're not for me, because he grew up in a different time. But then the thing that I constantly say is like, I don't want to grow up in the generation where when the new generation comes around, I'm cursing them out saying, your generation is trash and my generation is better because we did things a different way. Every generation does that. The current generation trashes this generation, and I can guarantee you that this generation is going to trash the new generation because we all think our shit is better when all the shit is the same. The only thing that changes are trends and styles and way things are done. And technology advances, but it's all the same. And every generation trashes every generation. It's going to happen to the end of time. But it's like, I want to be the kind of guy that when I'm 50, I'm not trashing the new generation saying, your music is garbage. No, I want to try and seek out the good music. I want to try and seek out the good movies. You know, and I think the problem with a lot of people is that they are not willing to look at things beyond a surface level. They're not willing to do the research and dig in deep, sip through all the bullshit to try and find that diamond in the rough. Because that's usually the case. In order to find that diamond in the rough, you have to sip through all the bullshit. Like, for an example, with hip-hop music, people say, oh, today's hip-hop music is trash. There is no good music. I beg to differ. I've heard a ton of great hip-hop music this year. But it took me a long time to find it. I had to sip through all the garbage in order to find that good music. Like, for example, there's a guy that I know who doesn't like rap music. He thinks it's all the same because he just listens to the radio or whatever people tell him. Everything's on the surface level. And I was listening to this guy named Lecrae, and he's a gospel rapper. Now, when you listen to his beats, they sound modern. They sound like trap music. But when you listen to the lyrics, he's preaching the gospel. And I was listening to this song through my headphones, and the volume was blasted all the way up, so you could hear the beat even though my headphones were on. And my friend heard that, and he started mocking me, saying, oh, you're listening to that hippie hop stuff. And I'm like, I took offense to that because I'm like, bro, you don't even know what the dude's talking about. You're just listening to it on the surface level, hearing the beat and judging it off of that alone. So when people say there's no good new movies, there's no good new music, it's like, I beg to differ. You're not doing your own investigations. You're not sipping through all of the hours of countless bullshit to find that one good song, to find that one good movie. And that's what you're going to have to do. Like, I'm a guy who loves to keep an open mind about everything. So hopefully when I'm 50, I'm not that guy waving my fist in the air saying, you fucking young punks, your music is trash. No, I want to be that guy to be like, I'm willing to listen to this new music until I find that really good song. Because, like, music this year, not all of it has been great, but there are a couple of albums and a couple of songs out there that have been monumentally exceptional. So moving on. Number 4. Many franchise films are made by people of considerable talent and artistry. So he admits that the Marvel movies are made by talented individuals, but all movies, pretty much all movies, are made in that vein. Because even if it's a low budget horror or a big budget movie, it doesn't matter. There are people, writers, directors, producers, cinematographers, people who create the music, the editors. All of those people are contributing their time and their energy. And some of them may just be in it for the money. They just want to get paid. But I'm pretty sure a lot of these people are in it for the artistry. They are passionate about their project. So yeah, I sometimes I'll bash a movie and say, "Oh, this movie's garbage." But at the same time, I have to remember that this is created by thousands of people. And some of those people may be in it for the money, but I'm sure some of them are in it for the passion. So I like the fact that he's not bashing Marvel movies 100%. He's being humbled and he's saying like, yes, even though these movies aren't for me, I know that these movies are made by people who do have talent and they are involved in it for the art. So I agree with that. And then number 5, the fact that the films themselves don't interest me is a matter of personal taste. Like I already said, yeah, it's all about personal taste. All movies are subjective. No one has the same opinion about movies. I can say a movie's garbage. You can say you love it, and no one's wrong. I'm not wrong. You're not wrong. We just have different opinions and our own personal tastes, and that's all art boils down to. Like I always say, you can have 100 people look at the exact same painting, and out of those 100 people, everyone has a different opinion about it. But no one is wrong unless the artist comes out and says what it is. Your opinion isn't wrong, because who the fuck knows other than the person who created it. Number 6. He says, but I grew up when I did. So again, he admits that he grew up in a particular time where cinema catered to his liking because that's what he grew up with. And now that he's older in this new generation, it's not what he grew up with, so he doesn't gravitate towards it. Perfect sense. I understand that. Some people aren't willing to admit that. Some people are just like, my opinion's valid and yours is invalid. But he's like, nah, I just didn't grow up during this time. If I was younger, I probably would be flocking to the movie theater like everybody else in this generation. Number 7. Cinema was about revelation, aesthetic, emotional, and spiritual revelation. It was about characters, the complexity of people, and their contradictory and sometimes paradoxical natures. The way they can hurt one another and love one another and suddenly come face to face with themselves. So this is me catering to my point about his own definition of cinema. Because when I look up the definition of cinema, what is cinema? Google. Cinema, a theater where movies are shown for public entertainment. A movie theater. So cinema is all movies. It's all movies. It's action. It's horror. It's thrillers. It's art house films. Cinema is all of that. There's no leaving anything out. As long as it's played in a movie theater or if it's shown on television, it's cinema. If it's got actors in it, a director, a screenwriter, producers, music artists, technical people, the grip person, all that kind of shit. That is cinema. Because you have thousands of people contributing their time and energy to creating a product. And so that's cinema. But to me, it like I said, it constantly feels like he's coming up with his own definition of cinema based on the time period when he grew up. And I don't agree with that. But he says, yeah, it was about revelation and aesthetic and emotion and spiritual revelations and the nature of characters that hurt one another and they come face to face with themselves. Have you not seen Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight? Have you not seen that movie? Even though it's a superhero movie and it's ridiculous about a guy in a bat suit and a cape, it makes sense because he's He even admits, Bruce Wayne in that movie, Christian Bale even admits that yeah, he's a little deranged. He's like, a guy who dresses up as a bat clearly has issues. He's making fun of himself because he knows how ridiculous it is. But at the same time, he doesn't want people to know his identity, so he wears the mask, which he points out in Dark Knight Rises. The mask is so you can protect the people closest to you, and then the fact that he's wearing the suit is a symbol to antagonize the criminals and make them fear him. Like, oh, this man is crazy. He's dressed up as a bat. He's clearly has issues. But then also, it's a tactical uniform. It's so that he can perform the duties that he needs to in succession in a successful manner. You know, like in Dark Knight, he gets the new stealth suit, and it's more vulnerable to knives and gunfire. But he uses that suit not only to strike fear in the hearts of criminals, but it's also a uniform. It's a battle uniform. It's so when he goes out there and he fights, you know, he can be protected and he can be stealthy. Because what is he going to do? He's going to go out there in his street clothes and fight crime? No, it makes sense that he's going to put on that outfit, as ridiculous as it looks, and he's going to seem like he's this Batman who is really deranged, but he's using this uniform for tactical reasons. It's just like when SWAT teams put on their battle gear, so when they get shot, they'll be protected. It's like just putting on a body vest. And so it's like, in The Dark Knight, Batman loses Rachel, right? And that has something where characters hurt one another. Where he loves Rachel, and she loves him, but they're both suffering because they know they can't be together. Because she knows that he's obsessed with being Batman because of the death of his parents. So even in Batman Begins with Katie Holmes, she's like, one day when Gotham no longer needs Batman, we can be together. But in The Dark Knight, she's like, you can't ask me to wait for that. I gotta move on with my life. I can't wait for you to have this revelation where I don't need to be Batman anymore. But then he's holding on to that because that's all he has left. He's lost everything. Bruce Wayne is his real mask. Batman is his true self, but he refuses to admit that. So he's hurting himself, and he's hurting Rachel emotionally at the same time. And he hurts her even more when he has Harvey take the fall, you know, for being Batman. And she even admits that the day won't come when you no longer need Batman. That's an emotional thing right there that happens in real life, where someone holds on to something because it's their last bit of hope in their existence, but yet they're so caught up in themselves and what they're doing that they don't know that they're hurting this other person by dragging them along, giving them a false sense of hope. So then when she dies, he loses everything. That was the only thing he had attached himself into reality. So now he's just stuck being Batman. But then he finds another escape of being Batman when he takes the blame for Harvey Dent's murders. So then in Dark Knight Rises, he goes into depression and all that stuff. So that right there alone, even though it's a superhero movie, there's action and explosions and excitement. It is a theme park because it gets your adrenaline pumping. There are paradoxical natures to it. It asks those questions about love and sacrifice. And what do you really want out of life? Do you constantly fight for what you believe in because you believe it's the right thing to do? Or do you have to sacrifice certain things? Like when Alfred in Dark Knight Rises confronts Bruce Wayne, he says to Bruce, he's like, sometimes I think we need to stop trying to outsmart the truth and let it have its day. You know, we need to stop doing that. And so there's these things that are in these superhero movies that reflect on real human conditions. So I think he's looking over that. He's just looking at the surface level of like, yes, explosions, it's action, characters die, but they come back to life, yes. But when you look at it beyond that, there are paradoxical natures of these movies and characters dealing with internal conflicts, not just external conflicts where, oh, I gotta stop the Joker because he's killing people. But then Batman is questioning himself because he's like, well, I don't kill people, but this guy's pushing me to my breaking point, you know, so what am I supposed to do? And then he loses Rachel and he's like, okay, you know, The Dark Knight could have went a little deeper. Like after Joker killed Rachel, Batman could have been on this vengeance spree, like, I'm going to kill you. But I think Lucius Fox brought him down where he's like, I know you gotta find this guy, but at what cost, you know, to human decency and to your own moral code? Or, like, for another perfect example, even in Infinity War, where you have Tony Stark cradling Peter Parker in his arms, and you look at the history of these two characters throughout the franchise. Tony Stark lost his parents and he never got a chance to say goodbye to him. Goodbye. He never got a chance to say goodbye to his parents, and he will always regret that. So then Peter Parker comes along and he sees himself in Peter Parker, and now he's a father figure. So things are coming full circle, but he doesn't know how to handle that because his father's never been there for him, so he has daddy issues. And then when Peter Parker, his his adopted son, dies in his arms, that makes him open his eyes and say, man, I had a feeling this would happen, but I dreaded the day that it would happen. Even though you know Peter Parker's going to come back. That moment alone is moi. It's perfect because of how the actors portray it and how it's sold. He died. Peter Parker dies in his arms, and he did not want that to happen. He always tried to protect him, like, you should not be here. You need to leave. I'm worried for your safety. I don't want to admit it that way, but I am worried for your safety. So when he dies in his arms, he feels like it's his fault, and he's constantly beating himself up about that. So when Martin Scorsese's like, there's no paradoxical natures and all that kind of stuff, I think he's wrong. Because even though, like, it is a theme park, there are explosions, there's action, all that shit, there's still gravitas to these characters. Like, even with Tony Stark in the first Iron Man, when he's this cocky asshole, and then he gets captured, he's got shrapnel in his heart, and he meets this guy, I forgot the guy's name, in the cave, and the guy helps him to escape, and the guy sacrifices himself so Tony Stark can escape. If that guy hadn't sacrificed himself, Tony Stark probably wouldn't have been able to escape. So when Tony Stark goes, and this scene makes me cry every time in the first Iron Man movie, I get watery-eyed, where Tony Stark kneels down to the guy and he's like, come on, man, you gotta get up, you're gonna go meet your family. And he's like, my family's dead, I'm going to be with them now. And that one line that gets me every time emotionally, where he says, I gotta think about it, when he's like, don't waste your life, and then he dies. I love that moment because it's like, this dude sacrificed himself just for the greater good, and then Tony gets the revelation, the realization that, yeah, I need to do better. So when you see his arc throughout the movies, it works. It connects to human emotion, where you realize the faults of your actions and something significant happens in your life for you to want to do better things and be a better person. You reflect on the past as fuel to make yourself a better person. And that's what those movies are. So even though it has all of that theme park shit in it, with the explosions, a lot of them have that inner struggle with these characters. Just like Logan with Hugh Jackman. That's the perfect example. Just like Logan, where he's struggling because he doesn't want to be a hero. It's like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, where he's like, I don't want to be in this, but there's no one else to do it. I have no choice. So when he says that, yeah, this isn't cinema because it doesn't have these essential things, I think he's wrong. These movies, when you really look at them and sip through the bullshit, because yes, there are a lot of superhero movies that are just money-making machines and they don't care about all that other shit. When you sip through the bullshit and get to the diamonds in the rough, they do have an aesthetic with emotional layers to it, with spiritual revelations to it, with paradoxical natures to it, where characters do come face to face with themselves. You just have to sip through the bullshit to get to the jewels, man. So I'm like, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So number 8. Many of the elements that define cinema as I know it are there in Marvel Pictures, he admits it. What's not there is the revelation, mystery, or genuine emotional danger. Nothing is at risk. Okay, I like the fact that he admits that, okay, many of the elements that define cinema as I know it are there in Marvel movies. I don't know exactly what elements, but he doesn't specify. But when he says, yeah, but there's no revelation in there, there's no mystery, there's no genuine emotional danger, what are you talking about? Just the movies I just mentioned have all of the stuff that he's talking about that they don't have. And another thing that upsets me about it is like, okay, when he says that the Marvel movies are its own thing, they're a new art form. That's I think that's completely wrong. For me, Marvel movies are action movies. So you mean to tell me that every single action movie in existence is not a movie? They're all theme parks. This isn't a new art form. The only thing that Marvel movies are doing is they're taking the technology that Jurassic Park made, that the Indiana Jones movies used. They're utilizing all of that and advancing it. They're taking the technology that wasn't up to par, that wasn't where it needed to be at. They're taking that technology and they're using it to their ability. Now, granted, a lot of the Marvel movies, they rush the product and they don't really take their time with it because it is just a money making machine. Like the end of Black Panther, for example, it looks like a CGI fight between Killmonger and Black Panther. They really should have taken their time with that, but I heard they rushed it because they had to pump it out. But I don't think what Marvel's doing is any different than what we've seen in the Indiana Jones movies. Only difference is in the Indiana Jones movies, they're practical effects, so you can say there is more weight to that because I do respect practical effects over CGI, as long as CGI is used effectively. Because a lot of people want to complain about the X-Men movies. It's like it's just a CGI fest. It's just a CGI. Marvel movies do the same thing. Like with the Infinity War movies, I watch Holden Hartman and his friend reacts to Marvel movies. And when Holden Hartman was talking about Infinity War, he's like, "Yeah, it's a good movie, but the CGI is fake. It looks bad." And I agree. I love Infinity War. It's one of my favorite superhero movies. It's the best superhero movie ever made currently. But yeah, the CGI looks bad. It's like we went from the CGI looking realistic in the first Iron Man to now it just looks like fake. It doesn't look real. But I'm so emotionally invested in the story, I don't care how fake it looks. It doesn't look too bad to where it takes me out because I'm not really paying attention to that. So, like I said, it's just it like he admits that it is a matter of personal taste, but when he goes off on this thing about, but here's why it's not a movie, here's why it's not cinema, because there's no revelation, there's no mystery, there's no genuine emotional danger, nothing is at risk. That is a lie. That is a that's not true. Because like I said about The Dark Knight, there is emotional danger there. There is something at risk. The integrity of the character and his moral code. You know, there are revelations. There is mystery. There is all that stuff. So I really don't agree with that. I really don't agree with that. Alright, so number 9. The pictures are made to satisfy a specific set of demands, and they are designed as variations on a finite number of themes. I agree with that. These movies are made to satisfy a specific set of demands. But whose fault is that? That's your fault. That's the movie audience's fault. That's my fault for seeing these movies all the damn time. Because in the article, he does make the point that, like, I'll move on to number 11. He says, they are sequels in name, but they are remakes in spirit. You know? And it's like, that's true. That's true, because like I said, a lot of these movies are just pumped out for the masses to consume right away. Like, that's how I felt Captain Marvel was made. I thought Captain Marvel was an okay movie, but it just felt so generic. Like, yeah, we've seen this a million times. We see it in Black Panther, even though Black Panther is a monumental achievement in cinema because it's an all-black cast and superhero movie. It still feels like it's the same thing, even though there were some nuances in there that made it different, but it's still the same origin story. Captain Marvel, still the same origin story. You know, like with Iron Man, it was new because we really hadn't seen something like that before, and plus the acting and the storytelling was exceptional. But when you constantly pump out these Marvel movies, you know, where it's the same origin story but with different characters, it's like that's tired, that's played out, you know. I want some theaters, or not theaters, but some movies don't take any risk to try and show us something different. But then every now and then, like I said, you got to sip through the bullshit to get to the diamonds in the rough, like Logan. like The Dark Knight, like Infinity, where you got to go through all the bullshit to get to those jewels, man. And so when he's talking about, they're made to satisfy a set of demands, it's true because of the movie going audience. Like how I feel about it, I'm not in Hollywood, so I'm probably completely wrong about this, but how I feel about it is wherever the money is, that's where the studio is going to go. Like when you like during the blaxploitation era, where was the money going? Blaxploitation movies, because that's what everybody wanted to see. That's where everyone paid their money to go see. So with Marvel movies, like when I saw Endgame, you go to the theater, every freaking showing a show is sold out. Why is that? Because people are paying money to go see it. You put your money where you want it to go. These movies make $1 billion because people are spending their money on it. Now I can guarantee you that if the new Black Widow movie came out and no one went to go see it, Marvel would change up their game plan. I can guarantee that if Marvel came out with 4 superhero movies in a year and no one went to go see them, like when you go to an indie movie most of the time and you pay your ticket, you go in there and the theater's practically empty. If that happened to 4 Marvel movies consistently in a year, they would change up their formula because you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're like, I want these movies to be different. I want them to do something new. Don't pay money to go see it then. Show them how you feel by not putting your money into that, not investing in it. And they'll hear you. That's how I feel anyway. But obviously you won't get a ton of people doing that because someone's going to go see it and it's still going to make money. But I don't blame Disney. I don't blame Marvel. I don't blame studio companies for pumping out these machines and not really taking a lot of time to make something that is nuanced. I blame myself. I blame you. I blame the movie going audience because we're spending our money on it and making them believe that this is what we want to see. If it makes $1 billion, why change something that already works? Because even though the movie sucks, it made $1 billion. Just like with Transformers, it sucks, but hey, it makes $1 billion, so why stop now? You know what I'm saying? If they came out with 4 movies and none of them were even in the top 5 box office for the weekend and they never made any money, they would change their tune. They would switch up the formula because they'll be like, well, shit, no one's going to go see these movies. So like I'm saying, I'm not blaming Disney. I'm not blaming Marvel. They're just supplying and demanding. Even though Martin Scorsese, it's not simply supply and demand. I think it is. If we don't pay money to go see it, then they're not going to make it anymore. As long as we keep paying our hard-earned money to go see the shit, and it makes $1 billion on an opening weekend, they're going to keep making it because they don't think anything is wrong because it's making money. So wherever the money is, that's where they're going to go, in my opinion. And so it goes back to, these movies are just nameless sequels that are pumped into the machine where it's disguised as its own thing, but it's not. Like, it's another origin story with different characters. It's the same freaking thing, but yet we still pay money to go see the shit. And as long as we keep paying money to go see this shit, they're gonna still keep pumping them out. So it's not the studio's fault, it's our own damn fault. Alright, number 11. I know I'm going to see something absolutely new and be taken to unexpected and maybe even unnameable areas of experience. My sense of what is possible in telling stories with moving images and sounds is going to be expanded. Now he's talking about the kinds of movies that he enjoys, where it challenges his mind and it opens up his horizons, and it's going to be something that is nuanced. Have you not seen Logan? Logan is exactly that. Logan is exactly that. It takes the superhero movie and flips it on its head. It turns it into something that has sort of never been done before. It's a rated R superhero movie, which a lot of studios were afraid to do because they know they want to cater to a bigger audience and make more money, so that's why they make it PG 13. I feel like Christopher Nolan pushed the envelope with that because he's Christopher Nolan and he's such an exceptional filmmaker. Because you watch Dark Knight, is a ton of like I even remember reading the paper where people were saying, how is The Dark Knight a PG 13 movie? You see people getting stabbed in the eye with pencils and getting shot in the chest and blowing up and phones in their stomachs and all kind of crazy shit. So he pushed the envelope with that. But when you watch Logan, it's straight up R. And on top of that, it deals with the themes of immortality or being mortal. You know, you're dealing with Logan, who was immortal and now he's dying, and then he doesn't want to be the hero, but he has no choice but to be the hero. He has to sacrifice himself for the greater good, you know, even though he doesn't want to do it. And he's also a father figure where it's like he doesn't want that parent role. He doesn't want to be a part of the child's life. But he's pushed to that breaking point where he has no other choice but to help out this girl. So you can't tell me that any action movie, not just Marvel movie, like Jurassic Park, Jaws, you can't tell me that any of these action movies don't have that nuance. You can't tell me that none of these movies have the unexpected or have unnameable areas of experiences where your senses are going off and you're absorbing these stories with the moving images and sounds that expand your horizons. You have to sip through the bullshit to get to the diamonds. Okay. I've lost track here. I've lost numbers because there's so much I want to get into. Alright, so the next one. He says franchise films are now your primary choice if you want to see something on the big screen. That's not necessarily true, even though he says in the next statement there are fewer independent theaters than ever. That's probably true. I'm an independent moviegoer. You could say I love independent movies more than franchise films. I do like both equally, I feel, but I love franchise films more than anything because I feel like what with Martin Scorsese saying, they do have a lot of depth and they do expand your horizons and they have deeper meanings with deeper stories. But that doesn't mean big franchise movies don't have that either. Just they have to sip through the bullshit to get to the jewels. But yes, franchise films are the primary choice. Why? Because of you, because of me. That's where we're putting our money. If we didn't go see these movies and we didn't put our money into it, they would, not right away, but eventually they'd stop making them because they'll be like, no one's going to go see this movie. They just go where the money is. If this is what's popular right now, it's big franchise films. That's what people like. Fucking Jurassic Park, for crying out loud. Jurassic World makes so much money. And I think it's trash. I think the last one, whatever that fucking, the remake of The Lost World, is garbage. But people went to go see it. Or like with Transformers, $1 billion franchise that everybody hates, but it makes money. Let's keep making it. You know, as long as you put money into it, they're gonna keep making it. So, like I said before, I'm not blaming the studios. I'm blaming the movie-going audience because that's where the money's going. It's like this money isn't magically appearing out of thin air. People are spending their money to go see this shit. And like I said, all films are subjective. And so if that's where the money's going, that's where the money's going. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change a person's mind about what they like. You just can't. But if you want to complain about big franchises, and I'm not talking about Martin Scorsese, I'm talking about you, me, as a movie-going audience. If you constantly want to complain about these big budget movies, then put your money where your mouth is. Don't go see them. Don't go see them. Like, for example, I'm not going to go watch Black Widow because I don't give a shit. I don't care about I seriously don't care about the Black Widow movie. I'm kind of done with Marvel. After Infinity War or after Endgame, I'm like, I don't care. Infinity War to me is the last Marvel movie. I am excited for Eternals and all that kind of shit. Reason being is because it's something new. It's not another like movie about, oh, the hero and you're gonna save the world and all this crap. That's what Black Widow looks like. I don't care about that. It's way too late now. I'm not watching that because after watching Captain Marvel and that movie, for me, just being okay and nothing spectacular, I'm not excited for Black Widow because I've already seen what they did to fucking Captain Marvel. What do you think they're going to do to Black Widow? I don't care. I am excited for Eternals though, because at the same time, even though it's a big franchise movie, it's something that we haven't seen before. It's going to be a more cosmic movie, which is what I've been waiting for in Marvel. Be more cosmic. Get off of Earth already. We've seen it a million times. Go into outer space and let's explore the different galaxies and planets, for crying out loud. Expand the universe like you promised. So you do something like that, I'll be excited. And on top of that, I'm excited for these movies because the same chick who directed one of my favorite movies the year it came out, a movie called The Writer, is based on a true story. I love that movie. And she's making Eternals. So I think it's a double-sided coin. Where it's great that you have these indie directors making these big movies. Because number one, I assume you don't have to pay them a lot of money. Like if you were to get someone like Steven Spielberg, you have to pay him a lot of money. But with someone like the chick who made The Writer, you don't have to pay him a lot of money. Because this is their first big budget movie. And at the same time, you get the indie director who gets to play in the big budget sandbox. And then if the movie is great, like with Patty Jenkins, from what I understand, she made the first Wonder Woman, and people loved it. She wanted more money for the second movie, and that makes total sense because it was a success, mostly because of your input and your involvement. You should want more money. There's nothing wrong with that. Ask for more money. If you got a hit on your hands and you got nothing but hits under your belt, you should expand your horizons and be like, okay, now I'm upping my fee. There's nothing wrong with that. And so, yeah, I don't blame theaters. I blame the audience for putting their money into it. It's not the theater's fault. And on top of that, it's not hard to find an independent movie, especially with the internet. You can watch it online, or if you really want to take the time, like I know when I saw Color Out of Space, right? I had to drive, I think it was like 45 minutes. I had to drive 45 minutes into the next city to go see the movie because it wasn't anywhere near me. I had to drive for 45 fucking minutes to the city that was next to me to go see the movie. And I was willing to do that because I wanted to see the movie. And dare I say, people aren't willing to do that nowadays. I think people are so lazy now that, for example, you can have a McDonald's that is right across the street from you, but yet you rather order DoorDash and have them deliver it because you're so lazy. Because the fucking McDonald's, right across, unless the fucking lobby's closed and you don't want to get in your... That's how lazy people are. Not everyone. Some people. That's how lazy some people are, in my opinion. We just become so lazy. Like, I watched the Joe Rogan Experience with Rob Zombie, and he's talking about, like, yeah, back in my day, I had to ride my bike for 3 hours just to go see a movie. So if you're that in love with movies, you will do what you gotta do to go see that movie. Period. So there's no excuse. Got the internet, drive, go on a road trip to go to the theater to go see the movie. And yes, there are fewer independent theaters, but they're still out there. It's just that a lot of the time, no one wants to take the time to drive that far out, and no one wants to take the time to go see it. Because usually when I go to an independent movie theater and go see an independent movie, there's hardly anyone in there. Alright. So next thing is, let me see here. If people are given only one kind of thing and endlessly sold on only one kind of thing, of course they're going to want more of that one kind of thing. That is sort of true. Because some people are extremely gullible. Like, when you're only fed one kind of thing and that's all you know, that's what you will stick with. Unless there's something that enters your life to change your mind. Other than that, you will be stuck with what you are given. So it makes sense, but at the same time, I will repeat that it's not the theater's fault, it's not the studio's fault, it's your fault, it's my fault for putting our money and investing in these things. If you really want things to change, you'll put your money where your mouth is and not go see them anymore. But when you're constantly being fed something and it's everywhere you go, it's hard to ignore it. And so sometimes you're being manipulated and you're forced to go see this. But at the same time, I feel like within the United States, we have a lot of options. We have so many options, we don't know what to do with those options. Like when you go to the grocery store, there's so many different varieties of food that you can choose from. So sometimes you just go with the generic choice because that's what everybody else is getting. Some people don't know how to think for themselves or voice their own opinion about things. They just want to go off of what everybody else is doing. And that's not right. So I do believe that, yeah, people are only given one kind of thing endlessly, and they're endlessly sold on it, and that's what they're going to go with because that's all that's out there. But at the same time, like I said before, and I will repeat, you have to sift through the bullshit in order to get to the jewels. And some people, not everyone, some people just aren't willing to do that. Alright, moving on. Many films today are perfect products manufactured for immediate consumption. I think I touched on this already. Yes, a lot, especially Marvel movies, they're just pumped out left and right. Like I made the example with Black Panther and the CGI at the end looking terrible. Or like even in Infinity War, it's got a great narrative, but the CGI is bad. They should have taken more time with that. Or like with Captain Marvel, it just feels like one of those consumption movies where it's like, oh, it's another origin story, but with different characters, and we're just gonna pump it out. That's why I'm not really interested in Marvel now, unless they do something new. But yeah, I do agree with that. That yeah, these movies are just pumped out for immediate consumption, and people are eating it up because that's all that's available. But yeah, you can still take the time within your day to go and find something else, and not put your money into these things if you're going to complain about them. So moving on. There's worldwide audio-visual entertainment and there's cinema. Again, there's no difference in cinema. Action movies are cinema. Drama, art house films, all of that stuff is cinema. You can't say it's not. You can't put your own definition on something because that's just not right. Like audio visual entertainment, I understand what that means where it's like, okay, yeah, it's just a theme park, there are explosions, all this kind of shit. But some action movies are more than that. And you saying that's not my kind of cinema, it makes sense because that's not what you grew up in. But just saying clearly it's not cinema, that's you putting your own definition on what cinema is. Cinema is a universal genre. It can be action, drama, thrillers, horror, art house films, all that stuff is cinema. Alright, moving on. I fear that the financial dominance of one is being used to marginalize and even belittle the existence of the other. I don't know anything about that. The financial dominance of one is being used to marginalize. Okay, so basically, I think it means where you put your money, where all the money's going. Endgame made $1 billion. Infinity War made $1 billion. Spider-Man Far From Home made $1 billion. Why? Because a lot of people went to go see it and they paid money. Some people saw it twice. I even admit I saw Far From Home twice. I saw Endgame twice, even though I don't really care for that movie. First time I saw it by myself, second time I saw it with a friend. And the second time I saw it, I fell asleep. But yeah, it's where the money goes. And like I said before, and what I will repeat, if the money doesn't go there for a long period of time, then the studio will know that the formula is not working anymore because no one's spending any money on it. So hopefully then they'll change their tune. Alright, moving on. The act of simply writing those words fills me with terrible sadness. So he ended it with that, and I feel his pain. Because putting myself in his shoes, I feel his pain about him growing up during a particular time and then seeing this day and age not be what he's used to. So it's like you kind of lose something that you grew up with, something that really affected you emotionally, and that is a part of your character, not be present anymore. So that is kind of sad. That makes sense. But at the same time, That's what history is. It's always evolving, it's always changing. That's what human beings are. That's what the world is. That's what it's all about. It's all about embracing that change. Even though it's probably not what you want to see or what you want to hear. That's just the way it's going to be. And I'm not saying that you have to keep up or you have to get with the times. I'm just saying you have to understand it. And I think that's what a lot of people's problem is that they are refusing to understand it. They look at it on a surface level and they're judging it based off of their own facts or opinions that they may have. Instead of actually, like I said, digging in deep, sipping through all of the bullshit that is obviously there, and finding that one jewel within the rough. Because just like with music, just like with movies, just like with any piece of art or entertainment, there's going to be a lot of bullshit that you have to sift through in order to get to that one good piece of art that you will love forever. Here's what I think should happen. Martin Scorsese should direct a superhero movie. And at one point I heard that he was supposed to direct the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, but for some reason he turned it down because I think he was more focused on The Irishman. But if I was Martin Scorsese, and I'm a filmmaker, a legendary filmmaker of his caliber, and I have a problem with these big franchise superhero movies or just big franchise movies in general, I would put my own stamp on it. Just like with what Ryan Reynolds did with Deadpool. Just like what Hugh Jackman did with Logan. Just like what Christopher Nolan did to The Dark Knight. They took these franchises that were once mocked by people and not considered cinema and not considered anything other than explosions and all that shit. But for fans of the genre, when you have Logan, Deadpool, Dark Knight, you have people who change their tune and say, this is something that is nuanced, this is something that is new, fresh, and different, this is what the genre needs, other than the pumping out money-making machine. So if I was Martin Scorsese, I would say, okay, you know what? I'm going to put my own stamp on this. I would love for Martin Scorsese to direct a Punisher movie. Because I think the Punisher is right in his wheelhouse. Because if you watch Martin Scorsese movies, his movies are extremely violent. Like one of the most violent types of movies you ever watch is a Martin Scorsese movie. Because when you see movies like Casino, Irishman, almost all his movies, when people get shot in the face, the blood is spitting out, people are getting hit with baseball bats, and he doesn't shy away from that. And so I feel if he doesn't want to make a movie that is deep in superhero lore or people with capes and flying around and CGI and all that stuff, I'd go with The Punisher. I feel like Punisher's right in his wheelhouse. He can do what he wants as a director. If I was an executive producer in Hollywood and I work for Marvel, or I'm Kevin Feige, whoever, I go to Martin Scorsese and be like, listen, make The Punisher. And I'll give you free range to do whatever you want. As long as it's Punisher, don't go off the rails and try to make your own thing and disrespect us. Make it The Punisher, but make it your own spin on it. And I think it would work because you can introduce the mob, then the dude his family gets killed and he goes on a revenge spree and he has all these guns and he's killing people and all that kind of crazy shit. And you can have emotional depth to it and you can have nuance and inner layers and external fears and factors and all that shit. So I would love for Martin Scorsese to do a superhero movie all his own. Get into the sandbox, man. Instead of complaining about it and saying this isn't for me, get into the sandbox. You're an artist. You're a creator. You're a director. You're legendary, man. You can do whatever you want. Make a superhero movie. And you don't have to make it cater to the money-making machine. You can make it your own thing. Make The Punisher. That's what I want to see Martin Scorsese make The Punisher because I think that's within his wheelhouse. Now, if he doesn't make The Punisher, I would love for him to take on Max Payne because I've been waiting for a good Max Payne movie because Max Payne, the story is too rich and too good for it not to be on the big screen. Like the one I saw of Mark Wahlberg, that was garbage. But Max Payne, that's another movie within his wheelhouse. It deals with the mafia and someone's family gets killed and he's got to get revenge and all that shit. He could do it, dude. Either do Punisher or Max Payne, dude. Like, do something within the comic book genre, please. You're an artist, you're a director, and I assume that this is what artists live for. They want to be challenged. I think as an artist, you want to be challenged. You want to take on a task. I wouldn't say that it's greater than yourself, but something that you don't necessarily agree with, but then you want to challenge it to see what you can do with it, to see if you can take it to the next level, to see if like you can create something to where you can fix all the things that you have a problem with and set the perfect template as an example to be like, here, I made this. Now I'm going to challenge you to see if you can make the same thing. So if he makes a Punisher movie or a superhero movie in general, and it's well beloved and it's well accepted, I think that will set the tone for every other superhero movie being made. They'll be like, damn, this is so great. I have to make something just as good or if not better than that. So I think that's what Martin Scorsese should do. He should make a superhero movie, and I recommend The Punisher. That's all I have to say.